So welcome to Intro to Blueprints. I'm Erica Penk, and this is a beginner level class. And I've done Unreal since, it's covering up my slides there, since 2015, and started off in the athletic animation interest, but moved into motion capture, became a technical artist. So it's like a blend of the artsy and the technical. And so with Unreal, I've been doing virtual production and VR and film and a really cool Make-A-Wish project that brought a little kid to Saturn via VR in the Unreal Engine. So that's a little bit about my background. And a sneak peek of what we'll be doing. In this project file, there's a button that you turn on, and then a battery moves up, and then the light turns on. So we'll be doing a simplified version of that. And some concepts we'll briefly be touching on in order to get that done is blueprint communication, some material instances, and timeline animation, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. And the outline of this class will be exploring the project. We'll go over blueprint definitions, coding concepts, different blueprint types, their particular UI, and then we'll bridge the gap between the coding concepts and the exercise by doing a whiteboard time. And then we'll jump in and see how far we get making the battery and the light exercise. So for those of you who are following along, I've got my Unreal Engine 4.2.5 open. Okay, Alt-Tab. And we are in the Intro to Blueprints level. And it's just a curated version of the content example projects. Let me go back to the bottom. So I took this project and then I took the things that I liked and then poof, this is the project that you see. Project setup, okay. And then this is what it should look like when you are trying to open it up. And Carol, do you have your project open? Are you good?
I'm having some issues, but I'm looking at what you're doing and taking notes.
Okay.
So, yeah, sorry, but yeah.
All right. So if you've got your Unreal 4.2.5 open, you can do File, Open Project, and then look for it in here, or browse if it's in a different spot. And I'll try to stall a little bit, and if that doesn't work, Warren to the rescue. He's I haven't mentioned it in this class, but he does a lot of cool stuff with the Weather Channel with Unreal. So hello again, thanks for coming. All right. So before I jump into Blueprint visual scripting, let me give you, here we go, Alt-Tab is your friend, an overview of the UI that you're looking at. I mean, I could spend an hour going over the UI of Unreal Engine alone, but just a brief explanation. We've got our viewport right here, and you're able to see your current level in here. And then you're able to place building block things, if you will, and drag them into your level. Like I just brought in a cube, or you could bring in a camera or things like that. That's your Place Actors tab. And then the content browser is usually more custom content that either you've migrated from another level or that you've brought in yourself or set up yourself. And then you can bring it into the level as well. And let's see, do I have, oh, where's my little, let me get this going. I don't know why it stopped, but I just want you to be able to see my mouse clicks and things like that. So if you want to navigate in your viewport, you can use W, A, so W, A, S, and D to move around. And the world outliner, if you click on these objects, it's showing you things that are in your level. And then depending on what you have clicked, it will change how your details panel looks. So it's dependent on what you're clicking right now. Okay, so that's very brief introduction on that. And then if you're trying to, if for some reason you did not automatically open in the intro to blueprints level, this panel right here expands and you can go down to the maps folder, and then let me clear filter search and untick my blueprint class filter. And here it is, intro to blueprints right there. All right, let me close that so I have fewer things that I'm alt tabbing between. Okay, so Blueprint Visual Scripting, it's visual node based, and it helps you create gameplay elements behavior. You don't need to know a lick of C++ code. You could, if you want, you can still do that. But at least in the Blueprint Editor system, it's just visual based. You're not writing any code, and it can help you make dynamic content. It can help you create interactivity, and you can do that with functions or events. And if I go to the next slide, you know, I just told you what blueprints are, but big picture, so what? What's the big deal? So blueprints are really good at helping you rapidly prototype and helps you make interactive content, you know, user interfaces. There's really endless things that you can do with blueprints. And the Unreal Engine, the industry uses for it, it's growing. It's not just games. If you know blueprints, you can help do architecture visualization, or maybe visualize an automotive, and you can change the car color when you hit a button, or do live green screen events for live events and pre-visualize what scenes are going to look like in a movie before they actually start shooting, or put a VR headset on and hello Jennifer, and you know, you could do some sort of training, maybe a medical training simulation or something. So there's just a lot that you can do if you decide to learn blueprints. And this slide I know is a little scary, but it's just, I'm trying to help explain what I mean by object-oriented. So let's just look at the first couple. So object-oriented, what I want you to think about is Unreal is not like this one really big file. It's huge, it has all of this functionality in it, and it takes forever to compile. That is not what Unreal is built on. It's built on a lot of different files and codes that are specialized. So each file has its own task, and it knows only what, you know, it knows. And it, since they're specialized, it avoids redundancy. And so they have these base classes, and in the case of Unreal, an object or a UObject is the very base class that all of the other classes inherit from. And when I say inheritance, I mean there's a parent-child class relationship, and I'm about to do an example to help explain that, but there's different types of classes that inherit from the object class. So instead of having to start over from scratch when you're making a new class, you can inherit from a parent class, and then you don't have to write as much code. So that is the structure, the building blocks of how Unreal is built. And then when you're choosing parent classes down here, these are explaining some different types of parent classes. But for now, you can just let it be. And if you start making a game, you can come back to this slide later, but you don't really quite need it at the moment. But there you go. Water break. Okay, so here's an abstract example. So let's say you have a person blueprint class, and this person has a name and a birthday variable. It's public, and then the person class has two classes that inherit from it. It has two child classes. So there's the cook class and the assistant class, and they both inherit the name and the birthday. But the cook also has a recipe variable, and the cook also has a make food function. And then the assistant can't cook at all, but they can go to the grocery store. And you know, maybe part of the make food function is to send over the recipe string, and the go to grocery store function takes that in, and so then it can go to the grocery store and get the right list of ingredients. And maybe I can update that function notation right there to say that it has an output. And then the cook, it has 3 children: an executive chef, a sous chef, and a baker. So they also inherit the name, the birthday, the recipe, but the executive chef, it has a secret sauce variable. So none of the other classes can see it. It is private. And something that is used in coding a lot, child classes can actually override the content of a function that it inherits from. So instead of the basic cook class functionality, the executive chef specifically would be making sure that the sauce is balanced and that the meat is, done and not black and not rare. And the sous chef would be chopping vegetables and sauteing, and the baker would be, making a cake if the executive chef checked the birthdays and told them to make a birthday cake. Otherwise, maybe they're making creme brulee. And so the ability to override functionality, that's called polymorphism, fancy term. You don't have to remember it, but that's just describing that. And then in the whiteboard part, we'll kind of diagram this before actually making our little battery and light interaction. And this slide is, again, maybe more on the intermediate side, but I'm just showing you that object class is the base class. Actor class is inheriting from the object class. It's used a lot. Actor class is for anything that you bring into the level. So if you were doing some gameplay interaction, move this a little bit. Let me minimize it. There, okay. So, if you needed to figure out, okay, a pawn can be possessed by a player controller. A pawn, it inherits from the actor class, and a player controller is a specific kind of controller class. And so it's a bit more on the intermediate level side, but there you go. You can refer back to it later. Okay. And then there's a big list of types, but we're just going to focus on the level blueprint and the blueprint class. So level blueprint, I can't decide, let's see, let's go this way. All right, level blueprints, they are unique to each level, and they are big picture in what kind of content you have in there. So you can swap between different levels. That's where you would have that functionality. It's called level streaming. Or maybe you want to fire a cutscene, and then you can access the sequencer from a level blueprint. Or let's say you are a person, you're going through the level, and then you cross a threshold, and all of a sudden you're a car, and you're driving around. So if the pawn possession is swapping, if you're swapping the pawn, then that's a big picture thing that you could be doing in the level blueprint. And then event binding, that's another cool thing, but we won't get into that too much right now. And these pictures right here, I'm showing you the level design workflow. If you ever download the content examples project, that's a good one to check out for the event binding. And let me show you how you would access the level blueprint for this level. So up in this menu up here, I go to Blueprints, Open Level Blueprint, and let's see here. So I've got some code that I added. Let's see, where's my my little button shower thingy? All right, I think it's really important for you to be able to see what I'm doing, so I'm taking the time to get this thing to show up again. Okay, there we go. Maybe I'm doing that button combination process on accidentally. Okay, so for instance, I added, all right, space bar will flip-flop between moving this child battery up and down. And so let's go over, I'm gonna hit the 2 button and go over to, I've got 2 different levels in here. So I've got this section and then I've got this section. And so let me see where I put these. I think I put it over here. Yeah. So if I hit play and if I hit the space bar, they go up and down. So level blueprints have direct access to specific instances in the level. And I can show you how you can easily add that again. So I'm just right clicking, create a reference to that thing. And then I can hook things up and go from there. And if I were to go to a different level, like let's say I go to example project welcome. Sure, I'll save. That's fine. If I go to blueprints, open level blueprint, notice how it's different. So again, stressing that level blueprints are unique per level. But let me go back to the other level and go over the UI a little bit. Okay, so again, we've got this menu up here and we've got a toolbar, and I'm just middle mouse scrolling out and right clicking to pan over, and I use compile and save a lot. So if I make a change and let's say I get rid of this guy, right? Delete, compile, and save. And then I can also play the game from here. And over here is the My Blueprint section. It's where your variables and functions and things like that go. So things that you want to be easily accessible. So if you're a code person, think header file information right here. And over here is where you have the graph editor and you interact with the spaghetti code, as I like to call it. And then over here is your details panel. And I'm going to move this a little bit right here. And it changes based on what you have selected. And then if you have any compile errors, they go down here, things like that. And then I'll go over blueprint classes and I'll pause for questions. So there's the UI. And then the blueprint class, that is something that lives, you can have blueprint classes and they will live in the content browser. It can have just 3D stuff. It could just have interaction. It could be both. And they're useful for when you want reusable behavior, and you can have multiple instances of it. And it's very, very common. And let me move this over. And remember, I mentioned picking a parent class. This is what it looks like to pick a parent class. In fact, let me show you how to make a new blueprint. So let me go to where I've got all the batteries, for instance. I'm going to click on the content folder. Okay, here we go. So let me right click and move that over again. So I did a right click blueprint class, and you can put this anywhere. And then it's asking you, hey, do you want the parent class to be an actor? Do you want it to be a pawn, a character? And it's telling you an actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. So that's what you would do most of the time. If you don't know which one to do, just do an actor class. And then BP, I'm just going to call it BP test for now. And since the battery search query is there we go. Okay, so there's BP test right there. So I'm just double clicking on that, and the UI is very similar, but there's now also a components tab. So I could add a static mesh, and I could go over here and maybe add a rocket or something, or a rock. I think there's a rocket in here. Yeah. Okay, and then I can zoom out. And so the viewport is showing you your 3D stuff. And then you can look around here and scroll around and zoom in and out. So that's the viewport. And the construction script is for dynamically creating your mesh before the game starts. And there's actually a really good example of that over here. Woo. So for instance, even though we're not playing the game right now, I can dynamically edit this mesh. So that's what the construction script is really good for. And then the event graph is where your interactive gameplay would be. And we'll be doing a lot of stuff in here today. So that is Blueprint class, its UI, the viewport, construction script, and event graph. So let's see, we've got 8:25, good. So let's pause for questions right there before we switch into whiteboard mode.
We're good here, Erica. Thank you.
Okay, so sounds like we're tracking, that's good. All right, so I'm going to stop share and then switch this to a whiteboard because it was funky when I was trying to do both at the same time. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we want to have a button where if the player gets close enough, if we have time, the button will change colors, and then it will talk to the button it will talk to the battery, and then the battery will turn the light on once it gets there. And ideally, if we had time and we were able to make this scalable, we would have the button be one class, the battery be another class, and then the light be another class, because maybe we want the battery to plug into things other than lights, or maybe the light wants to check and see if the battery actually has enough juice to turn the light on. But for time's sake, we're going to simplify it. It's going to be a battery light combo. So going back to our little diagrams, I'm going to make a big box, and it's not going to match the syntax exactly. It's going to be a little rough, but you'll get the gist. So over here we have the button class, and then over here we'll have the battery light class. And so the next thing would be to think about the components. Let's draw another box. This is just for components. So the button needs a static mesh that looks like a button, right? So button, static mesh. And it also needs a capsule or some kind of collision element to help detect if the player is close enough to the object. And then over here, we're going to need a battery static mesh. What else? What other kinds of static meshes might we need for the battery light combo? And you can unmute for this.
Can you hear me?
Mm-mm. Oh, I can
Yeah.
hear you, Warren.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe we need a fixture for the light. I mean, for the battery, or are you making a light?
Okay, so some kind of light fixture static mesh. Can you hear me? Nope. Yes, I can. All right, so a light fixture static mesh, and then maybe an actual light. I'm specifically going to use a point light for this one. Okay, and let's think about variables too. So let's say we want to have the button move the, be able to talk to the battery light, but how does it know what to talk to? I mean, how does it know to grab the battery light or the random button way over there or the floor, etc.? So it's helpful to have a variable that specifically says, hey, use and grab this class, this specific thing. So I'm just going to call it the, I don't know, current battery light, maybe. And I'm going to say that it's a public variable because we want to be able to set it in the editor and be able to do stuff with it. And then also thinking about functionality, because we could have the button talking to the light and it could be orchestrating all the strings, or it could say, hey, you, current battery light, you do the thing. I'm going to call the function that you already have. And that's better for object-oriented code anyway. So it's going to, first it's going to, when it's talking to the variable, it's going to check and see if the variable is valid, because we might have forgotten to set the variable. And if it's the right type, and if so, call its light on function or whatever we decide to call it. And then this is going to have a turn light on function. So turn light on function, which would look like that. And so let's see, what did we say? It was going to make the battery move up and then turn the light on. And then after the player moves away, battery moves down, and then the light goes off. But we also said that we wanted the, let's see if I can select, here we go. Can I select this and edit? In here, yes, okay. Before, we wanted to check if player is overlapping the collision capsule. And then if so, turn the button light from red to green. And then running out of room. If player gone, turn button off, switch the colors. So that's a general outline of what we're trying to do. Have I missed anything, Warren? Is there any glaring holes that you can see?
So far, so good.
All right. Then let's start diving in.
I have a quick question, Erica.
Yeah, go for it.
So you recommend having a board like this before creating a blueprint, kind of just to have a map of what we're gonna do?
It helps me. I mean, I think when you get better and it's just, you're already going to be in a good flow, you'll already be thinking about this and you won't necessarily need to diagram it out. But I mean, when people are writing complex software, I mean, they have to do this. But if you're just doing a quick prototype proof of concept, you could just do the quick and dirty, let me just try and get it done. And then you can go back and make it more efficient and more object-oriented and more scalable. But at some point, I think it is a good idea.
Thank you.
And, ooh, can I save this? Whiteboard is saved. And I'm just double checking. Okay, cool. All right, so I can go back to that. So let me, and for good measure, I'm doing a print screen. I'm going to Photoshop so I can just have that up. because I'm going to switch my sharing to my screen and I don't want to lose it. So. But we'll be going back to Unreal in just a second. File new. Okay. Paste. Okay, good. Backup complete. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay. Let's see how we're doing in the chat. Okay. Perfect. 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 All right. Okay. Exercise. Put it into practice. Right. All right. Now, in case we don't get to go super in detail on these, I've got material instances, casting, and timeline nodes. We can come back to this. So here's my test blueprint that I started making. And let's do, let me save out of that. And file. So let me get my bearings. Okay, it's got a rocket. And let's just start over. So I'm gonna go over here, W. And then I'm going to hit Control B to see where I saved the done version. Okay. So we've got practice making a new blueprint class. There's the right-click blueprint class. There's also this add new button, blueprint class. It's going to be an actor. I'm going to call it BP_demo button. All right. So we're going to make this part, the button part. So let's double click on it. And so we had, all right, it needs a button static mesh and a collision capsule. So let's add a component and type in static mesh. And I like to rename it button. You can call it button mesh, or just by seeing the little house icon, you know it's a static mesh. But just for today, we'll put button mesh. And it's empty right now. But if I go over to the static mesh section and I type in button, and I believe it's SM button. Yes, it is. So SM button. And then if you look at the M button inst, it's a material instance. And so material instances are cool in that if you have a material and then if you turn it into a material instance, it's like, let me go to the slide. Okay. So you can have like a master material, but then if you turn the master material into a material instance, instead of having to, remake it, you can expose a couple variables and then just tweak some of those things. And maybe you have a bunch of plastic type of materials, or you have a bunch of wood materials, but one is for the table and one is for the floor. And by using a material instance, you can expose these attributes and then interact with them at gameplay. So I'm being sneaky, and I'm not actually going to make a material instance. I'm going to take advantage of the one that the project already has for us. Maybe if we have some time at the end, we can delve into that. But for time's sake, we're just going to take advantage of the one that they already have. And so I was doing this magnifying glass to see where it is in the content browser. And so it flashed and said, hey, it's over here. So again, that was this magnifying glass right here. And it's doing the blinky thing. And then if I double click, and it has a variable called, where is it, state, right here. And if you go to its parent class, that will make more sense. So I'm going to click on the parent class, and it's again telling me right here. Okay. Let's see, I'm going to do a control tab to the M button. Here we go. And this is not a materials class, but just know it has two different colors. And then depending on this state variable, it will decide if it's going to be red or green. And you know, if you didn't already have this, you might be thinking, well, is it better to, you know, swap between two different materials or just to tweak one that's already there? And performance-wise, it's better to tweak one material than it is to swap between materials because of draw calls and things like that. But we're just going to go with this because it's already here and it's the smart way to do it anyway. So I have a bunch of tabs open. So BP demo button. Good. Okay. So that's that. We also needed to add a collision capsule, right? So I can do, you could scroll down, or I like to do, let's see. So here we go. We could do a box, we could do a capsule, a sphere. I'm going to do a collision capsule and just going to move it up. Come on. And then make it a bit bigger. Let's do, I don't know, maybe make it, that's huge. Let's try 2. Okay, and then move it in front a little bit. And I'm going to rotate around and maybe scale it up a little bit just to be safe. Nope, that was scaling it down. Let's do 2.5. I like numbers, they're easy to work with. Tab 2.5. Okay, and then maybe I'll move it up a little bit. And I'm hitting W to change it to be a move gizmo. So yay, just look down here if you're curious what button presses I'm doing. All right, so those are the components for that. Components here, check. All right, but we need a variable. So variable over here, and let me compile and save to variable current battery light. But I need to make it public right here so that we can manipulate it and access it. But I don't want it to be a Boolean. That doesn't make sense. I want it to be an actor. And make it an object reference. Or I could, Warren, do you ever make it like a specific class type, or do you just do actor? I'm just curious if there's another way of doing this.
Sometimes I do specific class types, but that's just so later on when I'm searching for it, if it's a list of tons of actors, sometimes I just want to query like a few specific ones. But 9 times out of 10, you can just use actor for me.
Okay, so we'll do actor today, and you know, maybe we'll figure out some pros and cons later. Another way of changing this public private, so an eyeball open is like the plus in our little diagram, and the eyeball close is like the minus for private, but also doing the instance editable does the same thing. And let's save that, compile, save. And let's go back, and I'm going to do my handy dandy Control B trick and then get back in the same directory where I was. And then, let's see, Carol, were you trying to follow along? Were you able to keep up with that, or do you need to see anything else?
No, I'm having to write notes and follow visually because I need more time to process what you're doing. So this, okay. I'm fine. But it's making sense. Like I'm going to be able to repeat this.
Yeah, come back to the video. All right, so I'm going to do right.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
Yeah, no good. All good. All right, so I'm going to do another actor class, and I'm going to move the people over. There we go. And then this one, BP underscore battery light, but I think I'm going to do another demo. Make sure I have that in there. So, oops. Intro. All right, where did it go, guys? Demo light, battery light, BP. BP battery light, there it is. All right, I'm hitting F2 to rename it again because I am picky and I want to put demo in there so I can find it again. So we have BP demo battery light and BP demo button. And going to Photoshop. So we're doing a battery static mesh, a light fixture static mesh, and a point light. And we could probably put more gizmos in there, but this bare bones for this. So add component, static mesh. All right. And then we need a battery. Medium, sure, you can change the size. And do another static mesh. And it's parented under the previous static mesh because that's what I was clicking when I was adding it. So I can just drag this onto the default scene root and attach it so that it's just under the root. And let me rename this. So the first one is delete battery. And let me get my strokes up again. And then this one, going to be, we'll call it the light bulb. And we'll grab that one. Light bulb. Okay. And then what else? A point light, right? Point light. And maybe I'll move it up and put it inside of the light bulb. And we'll have to move these in a bit to help with our animation, but for now that's there. Okay, and then we're going to have a function in there, but let's start doing functionality in our button class. And let me see if I can close tabs. All right, just organizing. Good. So, demo button. So, event gameplay. So, we are going to be putting things in here. So, in order to check and see if a player is overlapping the capsule, maybe we'll look into the collision category, right? That makes sense. So, we've got on actor, begin and overlap. We've got, so overlapping is overlapping actor capsule. That sounds good, right? But that might not be exactly what we're looking for. Let's see if there's any overlapping. Is overlapping actor. We've got component. So I'm just showing that it's not always obvious which node to use initially. So on component, let's go back to the collision section. Overlapping. What about is overlapping actor? We just did that one. Okay, I'm going to cheat. So we've got the event actor begin overlap. Okay, that's what I was looking for. So actor, so we're looking for when the player begins to overlap the collision capsule. And so it was under the collision category, but you know, if you don't know which nodes to use initially, don't feel bad because I don't always remember either. And so let me clean this up a bit. Delete, delete, delete. And why is it trying to do a bind event? Let me try that again. So actor, begin, overlap. Event actor begin overlap right here. This looks much better. Yeah, this is some fancier stuff. Much better. Okay. Yay. All right. So we want to know when the player has overlapped, do something, and then actor end overlap. Yes, event actor end overlaps. So after the player has left, do stuff. Okay. All right. And then, so I'm looking ahead a little bit, but what would be cool is if, you know, if you enter, it does something and then alternates between the turning on and the turning off situation. So the first time it'll do the A, and then the second time it'll do the B. And Warren, do you have any 2 cents on explaining the flip-flop a little bit?
No, I think the best metaphor was the light switch metaphor. Just does flow path top, then does flow path bottom, back and forth.
So it's going to alternate. It's an alternator. So I'm looking at time, so I'm going to start speeding up a little bit. So we're going to flip-flop between 2 different things. So for the turning on situation, we'd want to tweak the material. Remember the state variable, and if it was a 0, it was one color. If it was a 1, it was another color. And so what we can do is, fancy thing about components is you can bring them in here and say, hey, do stuff. And you want to say, hey, I want to set a scalar parameter on this button mesh. And a button mesh has a material, and it's actually a material instance, and the material instance has a scalar parameter, which we saw earlier. It was called state. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that's what we looked at. And then I don't remember if we need to turn it to 1 or 0, but we'll just make one of them 0. And I can hit Control W and drag that over to duplicate it. And it also says state, and hit 1. So let's just compile. And what does it say? It says, oh, look, I don't have anything telling me what the mesh should be. So I can drag this blue over here and fix it. Yay, okay. So let me drag the BP demo button in here, and I'm going to hit play, and we'll see if I did the colors correct or if I did them backwards. I did it backwards. Okay, but I know now. So I'm going to make this one 1 and this one 0. Doink. Okay, so that's a thing. And let's go back here. All right. So then we're looking at this. Okay, check if. So we did check if the player is overlapping the capsule, turn the button light, and then check and see if this variable has good information in it so that we can do stuff with it. And we have our selected battery, but if I click on you, we haven't actually set the variable. So if I were to use this right now and try to call a function on it, we would get an error. But let's put the BP demo battery light, let's see, right here. All right, I'm going to click on this guy, and then I'm going to hit F to refocus. So I'm going to take the eyedropper and do a click on there. Okay, so now it's selected. Our variable is actually valid now, but we still need to check. So I'm going to grab this variable that we just set in the editor, and then I'm going to make sure that it's valid. So I drag it off in this little editor. I'm going to say is valid, and the one that I always use has the question mark. So I'm going to do that one. If it's valid, then we can move on to the next thing. If it's not, I'm going to do print string, and I'm going to say nothing here. Or maybe there's something else going on, but at least you have an error message. And then I'm going to drag this and Control W, because the other situation needs it too, right? And I'm going to connect that. I'm just doing Control drag, and I'm going to make another one of these if it's not valid. Okay, the next thing we need to do is make sure that it actually is the correct type of class. So going back to our slides, casting. So the analogy I use is, let's say you're fishing, you captured something, but you don't know if it's a fish or a tin can. But if you take the step to actually reel it in and look at it, that's what casting is. You're trying to make sure you don't have a tin can, because if a fish has a certain flop function that you're trying to call, a tin can, maybe it would have a flop function, but not the one you're looking for. So we're about to do casting. So if the variable is valid, we're going to cast to the BP demo battery light class. Actually, that doesn't look right. Let's do the cast to BP demo battery light. Okay. I usually use these greenish looking versions of the casting ones. I've never used the purple version for whatever reason. So maybe, Warren, you've used it, but I use these. And then, okay. So in order to test to see if the variable is correct, we have to plug the variable in there to make sure that it is what we think it is. And then we're going to use another print string. And if it's failed, we say, this is not the class you're looking for. Okay, so that's the failed situation. I'm hooking that up. And then I'm doing a Control W and a Control W, because I like to duplicate things and not have to rework things. So Control W is your friend. So I'm just click dragging. Okay. Cast failed. All right. But if it is what we want, then we should call the function, right? Oops. Right click. But we haven't made the function yet. So, but it's yelling at me because I didn't hook up the variable. All right. So if I do compile, save, it's not yelling at me. Okay. So then we would just call the function. That's what the finished one was. Okay. So here we are in the battery light. And right click. I'm just going to do add custom event, turn on light. And then we need the battery to move up and down. So I'm going to need a timeline node. So I'm typing in timeline to add timeline, battery up, down, or something. So timeline nodes are great for time-centric animations, great for things like opening doors and flickering lights. And they use tracks to define the data. We'll make one of those really quickly. And then those tracks, like for instance, if you had a movement track, it becomes an output, which can then drive some information. So if I double click on here, look, a whole different window. And so if I want to, and at first I was thinking, okay, do I want to do a float or a vector, or which one do I do? And I'm just going to tell you from experience what this is useful for in this situation is you can have two different locations, and then these are relative locations. If I did world locations, then I would need to know, the locations, like right, I would need to know these numbers versus just 25 centimeters up or down, etc. And control tabbing, demo, here we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the time and we're going to edit, the speed at which the battery translates between, or linearly interpolates between, this location and this location. So I'm going to add a float, maybe call it movement lerp or something. And you can, what is it, shift click? Yeah, shift click to add some keyframes, doink, 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 and you can right click and edit the interpolation of it, or you can hit delete. If I'm not in the right click menu, there we go, to get rid of those. But maybe I want the animation to take 1 second, so that shortens the graph. And maybe I want to edit this so that the last keyframe is at 1 second, so it's at the end. And we are just editing the graph of, getting between, 0 represents the first location and 1 represents the second vector location. So I'm going to change the value to 1, and then I'm going to hit, I think, either F or home. F, there we go, to frame all of that. And then we've got a little movement lerp thing. And what it'll do is if we update the relative location, set relative actor location of the battery, and then do let me double check in here. It's the one that's right underneath the screen. The Dawn version of this one. This one, okay. So there's a lerp vector node that is iterating between, point A and point B. So here we go. And I'm going to close this one because I've got too many tabs open. There, okay. There we go. Okay, so let's do a lerp here between its original spot and, I don't know, maybe 25 centimeters above. But we're going to use this movement graph to drive the transition. And it's pretty boring. It's just a straight line right now, but you could make it a curve or change the speed of it, etc. And the thing with the update output is it's every single iteration frame of the timeline, it's changing things, whereas you could call an event after it's already finished. So let's plug this into the new location. And then we're not going to finish the entire example, but I am going to at least, maybe we turn the light on after it's finished. So I'm going to grab this guy and set the visibility, which is a rendering parameter. And then if we were fancy, we could check if, the battery was moving up or down, and then based on that, control this attribute right here. But let's just see what we've got right now. Compile, save, because I want to make sure we have time for QA. Let's go to this one. So I'm going to hit play and whoop. So we've got the button turning on, and we've selected the BP demo battery light. Okay. And then let's do the battery light. But this turn on function, we haven't called it yet. So let's do that at the very end. Let's just do it for the turning on. We won't deal with turning off yet. So let's do turn on. And then let's make sure we are getting it from our variable. Let's do turn on light so that it knows what to do. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm going to save. And I already know that this battery, I need to move it down at least 25 centimeters so that it's doing something logical. So let's do -25 or something. Okay. All right, try again. So, one more time. Okay, but the initial state of the light is on, so let's fix that. If I go to the battery light, click on you, point light, I make you off so that it actually will be turning on for the first time. Control tabbing over, hitting play. And then, okay, let's look at the battery light event graph. All right, I'm telling it to not turn on. Let's actually turn the new visibility on. Compile, save, and then go back over here and move out. And then, there we go. Okay, so we got through most of it. We would keep continuing and then make sure that it would also turn off. And if you really want to go into a deep dive, check out this one right here. This is the inspiration for the project. If I can drive, woo, hit play. And yeah, so there you go. So if you want to finish the exercise, I would look at that too. But let's see if we have any Q&A from there. I've got some extra learning resources and some extra hotkeys that you can use to make your blueprint making easier. But if you're curious what the whole thing looks like, we've got the flip-flop, turn on the light, and then we go over here, and then we're checking, okay, is it moving up and down? And so I was actually adding an input right here. So if I click that and I made it a Boolean, and that's how you add that little bit right there. We did not go over that. And then if it's going up, do play. If it's going down, then do the reverse. And I used the up-down conditions right here to drive the on and off visibility of the light. And I don't think I remember to plug that one in, but yeah, there you go. So at least high level, thinking about it with the diagram, I mean, it takes a while to figure out the nodes and things like that, but are things high level clear?
Yeah.
Conceptually, yes.
Okay. Because you have to start there. So, have any additional thoughts, Warren?
No, but one nifty thing about the timeline node is even in thinking in that time space will become in handy when they look at things like sequencer. So it'll be a lot of reusable knowledge from some of these examples.
So I think you can get the time space or something from it, so you can do slow-mo or things like that too.
Yeah, you can actually lerp in between. So for the Weather Channel, we did it where I heard like the wind and the particles slowed down over time, and you didn't want a hard like stop in the middle of reality. The timeline node interpolated that slowdown. So yes.
Yeah, and you could make like a nice, the light doesn't just pop on like what I've got. You can, my tabs are all out of order. Here we go.
Yeah, fade the brightness on and up.
But even in here, double click on that blueprint and go in. It doesn't just pop on. It's got a different graph going. And it's got a lot more logic based on if the battery is charged and things like that too. So, well, I'm here to stick around if you would like, but if you have other things you need to do, I understand if you need to head out, but I can go over some things that we had to go over faster or.
Thank you, Erica. I have to go back to work, but this all makes sense, and I'm going to go through your slides again. And are you going to send out that the blueprint diagram you made, or can you
I
email
did
that?
do a save. So it looks like it's a PNG. So I think I can send that out with the and put it in the drive with the rest of the documents.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna take a look at that too. Thank you so much. I have the children here too. I'm working from home. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, chaos. All right. Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right, Erica, I gotta head out too. Thanks for
All right.
having me again.
Thanks.